Good morning, everybody. I feel I want to say Amandla. As Tony said, I'm here to pay tribute to Morris Kibble. And I wonder if I could get you to stand, not all of you, only those of you who knew Morris, worked with him, were in the child health unit. Won't you just stand? And only some of you are grey. That's really wonderful to see. Thank you. So just over a month ago, Professor Morris Kibble passed away, marking the end of the most remarkable life of a most remarkable man. Chin up, David. A medical graduate of Wits, he undertook pediatric training at Edinburgh, returned to practice in Zimbabwe, where he served as a consultant to many of the hospitals in Bulawayo, and was there for a very long time, almost 20 years. And from there, he went to the Boston Children's Floating Hospital, where he was a visiting professor for a year. But the call of Africa was too strong. And he returned to the University of Cape Town as the first Stella and Lowenstein Professor of Child Health in 1979. Morris Kibble was a pioneer in child health. In South Africa, he was a colleague, a collaborator, and a mentor to many, and a leader of the national child health movement of the time, along with the late Lucy Wagstaff, who Harun worked with Walter Looning, and also with Ian Hay. And as head of the Child Health Unit, which was the Community Pediatric and Child Health Unit in the Department of Pediatrics at UCT, Prof Kibble was my professor. He was my boss for more than 15 years, but he was also a comrade and a friend. And it's a real privilege to have been asked to pay tribute to him today, Tony. Thank you. Morris Kibble was a brilliant academic who matched his outstanding clinical ability with a prolific output of almost 150 peer-reviewed publications and many book chapters, which reflected his wide-ranging interests, his extensive experience as a clinician, and also his curiosity. I recall having had to ask his opinion of a child we saw in a clinic together one day. He took one look and he declared, "Oh, that child has happy puppet syndrome." And I'm like, what's this man talking about? I'd never encountered this before. I hadn't read about it. It wasn't in Nelson, as far as I recall. And yet, he had seen a few children with the syndrome, and he'd even published a paper on it in 1973. So although he was a recognized expert on conditions like lead poisoning in children, Kawasaki syndrome, sudden infant death syndrome, he was also concerned about those conditions that parents really worry about, like colic and head lice and impacted wax in the ears. And it even had publications on those issues. So, but among the many, many conditions of his interest, there's one that stands out, and it was his lifelong interest in tuberculosis. This didn't only earn him a chapter in Paget Stanfield's textbook of pediatrics in the tropics, but even more significantly, it was his interest and his concern, particularly about BCG, that inspired the establishment of the South African TB Vaccine Institute. It engaged his participation in the BCG clinical trials at the Worcester site and benefited the many health professionals with whom he worked in the field. And his interest never waned. In fact, just a few years ago, he was still on the Satvi team as a very experienced and much valued reviewer of chest x-rays. But beyond his brilliance as a clinician and academic, Morris Kibble was also a patron saint of waifs and strays. As head of the Child Health Unit for almost 2 decades, he took on many interesting people and projects which weren't at all traditional in departments of pediatrics at that time. And yet, there were projects that still today remain so integral to the care of children. There was the Farm Health Project with Dermot McLean, started with community health workers in the Worcester district. There was the Community Radio Project, and Gabriel Urkoiti is somewhere here, over there. He took on this lunatic Argentinian who had this project for community radio, and my goodness, didn't it succeed? It became Zibonele Radio. The Maternal and Child Health Information and Resource Center, the Child Nutrition Project in Nyanga with Ray Carter, and RAPCAM, the resources aimed at prevention of child abuse and neglect, which very sadly this week announced that they have to close because they don't have funds. The waves who gravitated to the Child Health Unit also included the End Conscription Campaign aligned conscientious objectors of the day, who were accommodated as fellows of the Child Health Unit, as well as staff of Health Systems Trust and the Progressive Primary Healthcare Network. They lived as boarders in the precinct, as people would say, "Ik bly op 'n kamer by my ma," that kind of arrangement. And the debates and discussions in the tea room were wonderful. They were lively, and the ideas and practices of all these people enriched both the work and the impact of the Child Health Unit. In the child health community, Prof Kibble is probably best known for the textbook, Child Health for All, of which he was the architect with his co-author Lucy Wagstaff in the early years, and later with Tony Westwood and Harun Salaji, who's also now going to stand. Tony's making everybody stand today, so. But he's also known for the popular Parents' Guide, First Aid for Babies and Children, which he co-authored with his son-in-law David Bass, who also has to stand. As well as for his guidance to Marina Petropoulos for a baby and childcare handbook. So there's one interesting thing that many people don't know about Morris Kibble. Following the practice initiated by David Power, he, along with others like me, taught pediatrics and child health in community-based facilities like the old Sackler Clinic in Old Crossroads and the Heideveld Day Hospital. The Day Hospital was a fee-for-service facility and was separated from the free well baby service on the other side by a door, which was invariably locked, and we struggled to find the key very often. So when a patient needed to be referred from the free well baby service to the fee-paying day hospital, first of all you had to find the key, then open the locked door, then the parents would have to go and pay for the service at the day hospital. So sitting in an ANC Western Cape MCH meeting in the early 90s, Morris raised this as a concern to be given attention in any new policy. And he suggested, why don't we just make all care for children under 6 free? And from that insightful recommendation, the rest is, of course, history. I don't know if Madiba ever attributed that to Morris, but I can tell you that it came from him. But Morris Kibble wasn't only a legendary child health leader. He was a man for all seasons. He was somewhat of an ICT geek. I think he was the chair of the committee, of the e-learning committee in the Department of Pediatrics until he was almost 80. He was a dog lover. He was a good chess player. He was an accomplished tennis player until his 80s, and also a very polite tennis player, because John Rowdy tells me that if his opponent couldn't return a shot, Morris would apologize to his opponent. And of course, he was a wonderful tenor who loved singing oratorios and lieder, as well as being a brilliant lyricist who wrote comic lyrics to well-known tunes, and then performed the songs at academic events and conferences throughout the world. His poetic creations were published in this book. I think it was published about 5 years ago, General Tso's Chicken and the 7 Deadly Sins, yeah? And in my view, if Bob Dylan could be awarded a Nobel Prize for his lyrics, why not Morris Kibble? But we at UCT will never forget the rapturous response of the students at the huge faculty centenary concert when Prof Kibble, then aged 82, took to the stage to sing Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, but he substituted the Hallelujah bit with every known human condition ending in Asian. So with hundreds of students and staff singing in the quad, the rousing chorus went like this: glory, glory, constipation. He sometimes sort of corralled me to sing choruses with him. Maurice Kibble lives on in his publications and his witty songs, but his legacy will especially endure in those whose lives he touched as a doctor, as a professor, as a colleague and a friend. And above all, his legacy will live on in his children, Shelley and David, and Owen, who's not here, and his grandchildren. As I said at the beginning, Maurice Kibble was an amazing man who led an amazing life. A few minutes is all too short a time to pay tribute to this incredible human being, and especially for me, of almost 4 decades of knowing him. But along with many others here and elsewhere, I will always be grateful that he crossed my path.
Thank you very, very much. I have one of Maurice's songs, but I'm not going to sing that now in the interest of time. I'm going to sing it just before the AIDS section, so please arrive early for that. Leslie, please come.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning, Walter. It's really an honor for me to stand here and to acknowledge the enormous contribution that Professor Walter Lüning has made to child survival and child health in South Africa. And also to acknowledge how he has served as a wonderful role model and inspiration to those of us, I think all of us gathered here, who, like Walter, hold ourselves accountable for the health and development and well-being of children in South Africa. Walter's career is summarized on the slide, and you can look at that. But I only have 5 minutes, so I'm rather going to concentrate on perhaps a common theme, really the tale of 2 books. So the first book is this one. So people from my generation will no doubt recognize this book. It's Pediatrics and Child Health, a handbook for health professionals in the third world, edited by Prof Kuvadia and Prof Lüning. This book lives on in new editions that look a little bit different. But this was the book that taught us pediatrics and child health. And I think in many of us first instilled the love of child health and the desire to contribute to child health in South Africa. So I really show you this book as a symbol of the enormous contribution that Walter has made to medical education in South Africa and beyond. Now, many of us follow in Walter's footsteps. Figuratively, I also literally follow in Walter's footsteps, in that when I went to work in the National Department of Health, I took over Walter's office. And although we have subsequently moved, I still have his collection of books in my bookshelf. So when I was asked to speak today, I went and had a look, and what I found, slightly dusty in my cupboard, is the very first IMCI chart booklet in South Africa that was prepared for the course in Mpumalanga in 1998, the very first IMCI course. And I think what Walter will probably be best remembered for in every primary healthcare facility in the country is for being the grandfather of IMCI. Walter worked in the National Department of Health, and I think it was through his vision, his hard work, and sometimes his sheer bloody-mindedness that IMCI was accepted as the key child survival strategy in South Africa. And I think the rest is history. When I travel around the country, I still come across nurses who proudly tell me that they were part of the first IMCI course, or they were taught IMCI by Professor Lüning. And even those who never met him This has been passed down, and people still know and speak of him as the grandfather of IMCI. In my job in the National Department of Health, there are many stresses. One of my jobs is to look at the data every month, the DHIS data, which we receive 6 weeks after the end of the quarter. When I download it, the first thing I always look at is how many child deaths there have been in the past quarter. And the good news is that every time I look, I see that there are fewer deaths than in the quarter before. And I think we really owe a huge contribution to Walter, who really set the scene for that to happen, that we are now reaping the benefits. We can now look and talk and dream about ending preventable deaths. We no longer need to focus entirely on survival. We can also think about thrive and transform. So thank you, Walter. I don't know if you have this copy. I'm not a copy of this. I'm not giving you my pediatric textbook, but I think it's very appropriate that the original chart booklet finds a home with the grandfather of IMCI.
It's all here. Yes, it's actually in my presentation. Sorry, I've just lost my place here. I'm trying to find what the keyboard is. Here we go. I'll do that at the end. Where do we go?
Right, so what Tony hasn't said to you is that you'll see the color change on the slide. So the first slide was really red, and it sort of signifies the survive theme. And I'm speaking to a green slide, which is the thrive theme, and the next person will speak to the transforms theme. So that's where the color coding comes from. And in a little while, you'll see a photograph, which I've referred to in that slide. So it's my privilege today, and good morning to everyone, and I'm extremely grateful, feel tremendously privileged to be able to give a tribute to my long-standing colleague, mentor, and friend, Professor Ian Hay, with whom I worked for many years and in various capacities in the course of my career. Prof Hay graduated in 1970, and despite having no child health or community orientation in his training pathway, at that time, baby feeding was taught as diluted cow's milk with added sugar. Nothing on breastfeeding. His experience as a junior doctor for a short while in the UK led to an awareness of community child health services, and this then became his focus throughout his career. Prof Hay's strong advocacy for promoting child health in South Africa is portrayed in the group photograph you'll see a little later. It was taken in 1993, where all the colleagues who have spoken and have been acknowledged today are actually appearing on that photograph, where in his capacity as Professor of Pediatrics and Child Health at Modunsa, he initiated a collaborative event gathering together all the child health experts in the country at that time in an effort to establish a child health footprint at that institution. I chose the word nurture to describe Prof Hay's contribution to the thrive domain of our conference theme, and which is perhaps best illustrated through his proactive engagement and support of various nutritional and nurturing initiatives such as the National Breastfeeding Week, the acceptance of the Code of Ethics for the marketing of breast milk substitutes, the establishment of the Goldfield Nutrition Rehab Unit at Modunsa, and later on the establishment of the Kalafong Hospital Kangaroo Mother Care Unit and the Maha Hospice for Children with HIV/AIDS, where children admitted for terminal palliative care were so well nurtured that they began to thrive instead. A passionate teacher, Prof Hay considered his best endeavor the development of an undergraduate curriculum joint teaching program which combined the traditional pediatric reductionist approach with family medicine and community health models, and thus enabled students to see patients in the context of their families and community, using Lieberland Clark's 5 levels of intervention, namely health promotion, specific protection, early diagnosis and management, limitation of disability, and rehabilitation. Prof Hay's research position as co-director of the MRC unit for maternal and infant healthcare strategies, together with Professor Prof Patterson, and his participation in all the perinatal priorities conferences demonstrated his appreciation for integrated maternal and child health care, also bearing witness to his wide range of interests and abilities as a proverbial generalist, spanning across perinatal, pediatric, as well as community child health and nutrition domains. As a mentor, the challenge Professor Hay used to put forward to all of us as his students and colleagues and to childcare, health carers, always was, how could this child's illness have been prevented? His focus being on health promotion and protection of children throughout. In a motivational letter written to all of us gathered today at this conference, Prof Hay writes, I would like to describe those of you involved in child health as a sort of character reference. At heart, child health carers always ask this question, how could this have been prevented? A child health carer is someone who is prepared to tackle difficult challenges, is a team player, searches for solutions in big complex systems, is an advocate, is motivated by results, not just by individual patient thanks or rewards, is patient, is an informatics scientist, needs complex skills in communication, information analysis, management, persuasion, diplomacy, persistence, prioritizing competing demands, confidence in your career choice, over and above your clinical skills, and above all, need passion and a degree of missionary zeal. He enthusiastically concludes with these encouraging words, seize the day and seize the challenges. Be confident in your professional calling and make a difference. Thank you for celebrating with us today Prof Hay's contribution to child health in South Africa.
I'm just going to put up that picture that was wanted. Then I'll hand over to Maylene. Oh dear, it's doing it on the phone. There they are. And I'll put that up in a moment. Maylene, can I hand over to you? Want a picture? You do it.
Good morning, everyone. It's very daunting to give a tribute to someone who's perfected the art of giving tributes to other people. And I've already got a warning sign. So Marian, I apologize in advance for the images that I'm going to be showing here today. So I'm talking to the theme of transform, which means one of the meanings, make a marked change in the form, nature, or appearance of. A tribute to Professor Marian Jacobs. Born and named Marian with an A, already a bit unusual from as early as her first 1,000 days. In medieval times, when others were called Richard the Lionheart or Alexander the Great, she would have been known as Marian, the challenger of convention, the advocate of children, and the cuddler of babies and puppies. Many a health program in this country, policy, law, child health publication, can be traced back to her incredible strategic and visionary ability. From the first National Program of Action for Children, to the current flagship production of the South African Child Gauge, which we all wait for eagerly every year, to more recent international strategies on childhood obesity. When the rest of us are still thinking IMCI and vitamin A, Marian is already thinking about climate change and environmental impact on children. Marian is also no respecter of persons. Everyone is equal with her. She's equally comfortable with climbing into hospital beds to comfort distressed, sick babies, as she is with discussing strategy at the highest level of international decision-making a rare trait. And this is a picture of Marian as the Minister of Health of a fictitious country called Amphilia, also part of a flagship Masters of Philosophy in Child Health, Maternal and Child Health that she had started. And this is Marian, unconventional at all times. She's also a mapper and a launcher and supporter of many a career, and I'm sure many of you can attest to that, including my own, but all done with a visionary glint in her eye, thinking of the next strategy to promote child health and purposefully targeting the next unsuspecting candidate who could contribute to that vision. And we all had been under that, I think, visionary glint of hers in one way or another. She is a mentor of many, children and young people included. Who else other than Marian would be referred to by a 13-year-old teenage boy? And as we all would know, 13-year-old teenage boys are not very complimentary about people, but called by my own son, the coolest older woman I know. And he added more recently when I told him about this tribute, "Mommy, please tell them that she is a role model. Please make sure that you tell them that." And aptly said, "So she is. So you are, Marian." A role model as a caring clinician, having got into many a baby bed at Red Cross Hospital to cuddle those babies. A selfless, most atypical academic, not caring very much about her name on publications, but caring about our names on publications. As a friend, as a partner, and a mother. And I've certainly come to know, if trouble is afoot, there's no one better to have by your side. So, Marian with an A transformer? I think she might as well have invented the word.
As the final part of this session, we are extremely excited to have probably the only example of this in the world. They are wonderful pictures done by Prof Marian of the tree of life these families, and there's a little silver leaf. Person. What I'm saying is that this is the tree of life, and it was drawn by Sonia Rademeyer, who was one of his patients many, many years ago. And the little silver leaf on this is her representation of Maurice Kibble. So we would like to give these to our... And now, with deep apologies to the chairpersons of the next session, we will move to the next session. I do apologize, but I think we'll all remember today, and thank you again.